So when it comes to using author statements in DC, it seems like everyone has a separate opinion, but I seem to use people who are consistent and build upon ideas that have been set upon pretty much everything before them, and I think Scott Snyder is a really good example of somebody who manages to do that in a very effective way. There's a lot of people who think that he's not very good as a source because they feel like that he has upended a lot of things whenever it comes to Grant Morrison's vision of everything to do with DC and everything along those lines. But I feel like everyone really discounts what Scott Snyder has done and how well he plays with Grant Morrison's cosmology, in all honesty. I wanted to kind of drive that point home because a lot of people don't think he works with Grant Morrison's cosmology at all, actually. In fact, they think they entirely retconned everything to do with Grant Morrison's cosmology. But here we have a wonderful little excerpt from the Heroes Initiative that kind of puts those points to death. In this snippet, you will get confirmation that Scott Snyder actually works underneath and with Grant Morrison on everything that he does. In fact, Tinian and a lot of the other really big names do as well, in fact. And they actually get approval from him in order to do these things and expand his specific vision of what Grant's multiverse is. All they're doing is adding to it. And these few clips here will kind of drive the point home. Check this first one, for example, where it's pretty blatant.
Awesome.
And Grant also like chimes in and lets us, like, gives us, pointers and also approval and stuff a lot. So I talk with him relatively frequently, at least a few times a year while we're working on the stuff. So yeah, so nothing is like done in a way that's meant to, upend anything he wanted to do.
Okay, cool.
Following up here, here's another statement where he says he never wishes to be reductive to the cosmology or like everything that has come before them as well.
Yes, and I think I lean into the models that you're just talking about as well, and that the last thing that we ever want to be, just to be clear, is reductive or constraining in our cosmology or our theology of the DCU. But the fun thing is to be able is being
Sorry for cutting things off so fast, but then they go on quite a rant on other things which aren't necessarily important directly to this. But there you have it once more. He never tries to reduce what has come before, only build upon it.
Mysterious pieces that don't come together into one myth. And part of the fun of somebody like Kirby, some of the idols of mine, like the Simonsons, Frank Miller, just going on, like Alan Moore, they take things and they decide they're going to just push past the existing mythology or build on it to make something that just kind of goes another mile into some insane zone. And the fun here was to try and do that and say, well, what if we take these pieces that exist around this kind of origin story for the DCU, this hand, the Chronosaw, the creation of the Source Wall, the beings attached to it being mysterious and enigmatic, and we kind of weave one story around it, but then leave a bigger story behind it. Like if Perpetua is...
In that last recording, basically what we saw was him saying, hey, we established everything that is. I want to build past what is and kind of develop things beyond where things are established, which is exactly where the majority of Snyder's cosmology takes place, in the sixth dimension, and obviously in the greater omniverse, things out there in the overvoid, etc., etc. It's pretty straightforward stuff, especially if you dig just a little bit of time into looking around for statements from Snyder, and honestly, they're pretty solid stuff. So here we get confirmation that Scott, while developing the sixth dimension, actually works with Grant Morrison, and they have a big back and forth. Obviously can't go through the whole thing here, but it's actually really awesome to show everything that's going on in the relationship that these two figures have.
In Multiversity, which Grant made, we got that map. I was wondering if you could sort of, your vision for the sixth dimension relative to the map, what kind of was your take on that? What kind of were you going for with that?
Well, I spoke to Grant about that. The hard thing is, it was funny because it was like, I was talking to him about it and I was like, I want to visualize the map. And he's like, well, the map is always a pain in the ass because none of it would be spatial or time-based. Do you know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
There really isn't a way to do a map when you're talking about a realm that's beyond imagination, or imagination that's totally counterintuitive. So it's hard to place that layer. The way that I like to think of it, even though again it doesn't really make sense geographically, was that it existed towards because if the sixth dimension is the place where beings that exist beyond our imagination, that are capable of things that we can't fathom, sort of form, that it would be almost towards the top where, above it was at the top of the sphere. So.
And in this last specific section, Snyder will be talking about the most probably explicit scans that are documentation that he has about exactly what's going on with Snyder, his opinion on DC, and everything going on. He really loves DC. Once again, he only wishes to add to DC's cosmology, not subtract from it or change it. He just wants to add extra things on top of kind of what's there. And this man actually talked to Grant Morrison about including the sixth dimension and everything else beyond the sixth dimension that he has so far outside of our localized multiverse. This is just raw truth and facts, boys.
The biggest point I would try to make about this stuff is that we really do care about it a lot. Like James and I and Josh, when we do metal and we're doing death metal now, like we reread all of the stuff. I talk to Grant, we talk to anyone that we can speak to about, the rules and regulations, the deepest DC fans in editorial there about it, because we don't want to step on anything. But the fun of it is to try and find the pieces you're inspired by and be additive. No one's trying to break anything or detract from the DC universe. It's all about adding to it. So the idea is trying to say, well, yes, the source wall was the boundary, but if we go past it, can you create something that gives an equal sense of mystery, awe, all of that, and then creates a mythology that's only going to keep that. That's what Grant was saying. We were talking, and he was like, if you break the source wall, you got to put something on the other side of it that's equally, sort of wondrous and terrifying. And I was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm going to. And he's like, let me guess. He was like, they break the source wall, and then on the other side is Marvel Comics. And I was like, oh, if only. If only we could do that. If it was like the source wall breaks at the end of Metal, and then you see the Silver Surfer. You know what I mean? Like, and it's the beginning of the DC Marvel crossover. I'd do it in a set. I'd write Batman in that. I'd do that. I would do that.
So there you have it. Scott Snyder's pretty much doing everything with everyone. He takes words exactly from Grant, and if you're paying attention in that last little bit, for those of you guys who believes DC is in somewhere in Marvel's Orrery of Worlds or somewhere in the many multiverses that exist out in the Bleed, well, guess what? That's not the case. Marvel's well beyond any of those worlds, okay? It is what it is, and I don't know what you want from me, but Scott's clearly a really good guy, and not only that, he has some pretty banger-ass interviews. Definitely check the original interviews, both the Imaginary Axis interviews with Scott Snyder, as well as the Heroes Initiative interview with Scott Snyder. I should have the links down below, because obviously I want to respect these guys' original content. They worked their asses off to make it, and hopefully you should too. Speaking of respecting content creators, have you liked and subscribed yet? If you didn't notice, I actually left out my entire introduction earlier and just ran straight into the video. If you made it this far and you really liked the lack of introduction inside the videos, with me giving all the YouTuber spiel and stuff, give me a comment down below. It really helps me spread in the algorithm, but I feel like it bogs down some of my videos sometimes. But definitely let me know what you think, and let me know what you also think about Scott Snyder. I tell you what, if I get another one of these videos, I tell you what, if I get 100 likes on this video, then I'll do another one of these kind of videos where I do some research into a specific author that people just, I don't know, hate or like discredit for literally no reason. Poor Scott's over here taking all this flack for the Grant Morrison fans, because he's doing things beyond what Grant Morrison did. And guess what? Like, it sucks to suck, but like, Grant helped him do it. So don't be mad at Snyder. You can be mad at Grant if you want, but it is what it is. But I don't know, man. It was a pretty wild time. I love doing these kinds of videos for you guys and getting some truth out there. And that's pretty much it. Be sure to like and subscribe, as I said earlier. Become a channel member if you have not, because I get access to all sorts of dope perks. And we'll catch you next time, Lanterns. Later.
Corrupting and creating events that affect the entire verse was the only way she theorized to decimate her source wall curse, and so she whispered madness to her child, the Anti-Monitor, driving him towards his revenge on his brother, the Monitor. A crisis on infant Earths is what he decided to grant, but her children were